in the voice of the station.
You are what you watch. Hello, good evening. My name is Tambuatco and welcome to our program. Current events, that's going to be the topic for today, simply because there's enough to talk about with just the issues that keep going on and on and on like an ever-ready battery in the front pages of almost every major broadsheet. It seems the events that take place is all about and again all about the impeachment and exactly where that's going. The co-host in this show, as regular, we always have Dr. John Teope. We would like to take advantage of this first half, the first segment, to talk about the basic impeachment and what we call the boring impeachment, but we can't put that as a topic because it's a bit derogatory. But what we'd like to do is discuss these issues and bring it up to light to help you, the viewer, understand the different points of views that are raging. As of this afternoon, siyempre, nagkagalitan na. But anyway, how about an introduction from John? John?
Thank you, Harry. Alam niyo po, mga kaibigan, ladies and gentlemen, 24 days impeachment and current events. Napakaraming pangyayari yata sa ating bayan, from politika, sports, artista, everything that we have right now. And as we look at the impeachment process for 24 days, you might ask somebody, kayo ba ay insisihan sa impeachment or ano ba ang ating natututunan? Pero within a certain point of view and looking at different perspective, as if people are now being bored about the impeachment. And slowly by slowly, parang nakikita na natin yung agenda yata ng impeachment. Is it really to impeach Corona or is it really to force Corona to resign? Kasi sabi nga kanina ni Senator Juan Ponce Enrile, ni Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, is that you should have evidences before you go here in the court. But the problem is that, sabi nga they're fishing for evidences and witnesses. So, ikaw, Harry, ano tingin mo dun sa case na to? Kumbaga, is the prosecution ready?
Well, I think ang mga sumasagot dyan, yung mga senator judges. This is nice. You know, I really like this, John, because finally, we're given an opportunity, tayong dalawa, to discuss on TV. Kasi, we're always hosting it, diba? With all the different guests, and we like to go into their issues and their topics. And ang ganda that we actually have the first 30 minutes to talk about all these issues. So our viewers will also know exactly where you and I are coming from. Before I answer that, I'd like to address Noynoy's President Aquino's speech. Okay. First, it started in La Consolacion, wherein he actually already defied all rules of how do you say it? All rules, or ang tawag yung sub judice, di ba? So, I mean, kinondemn niya na si Corona.
It's more of denouncing every rule in the court.
And he said, tsaka nagbanta na siya na, well, this guy is guilty, Corona is guilty. Tsaka nagbanta siya, he's not gonna be held back. 1-2 days later, it came out in the headlines because nag-world war silang dalawa, sumasagot na rin si Corona. Of course, he's defending himself, calling him mentally unstable, di ba? Okay. But, sumagot ang palasyo, sabi niya, hey, sobra ka naman, I'm not gonna gag you. Sumagot ang Senado. How can we gag both of you? You're both co-equal and matataas ang branches of government. Talagang, well, like I said, and I wrote in my articles, the constitutional crisis is already ongoing. Let's not fool ourselves. The point I'd like to stress is, while the impeachment is ongoing, the other day, yesterday, we had the EDSA Revolution 26, diba? Saturday. He came out, he started talking Pinoy, and tama naman, as our president, and being the son of Cory and the Yellow Army and everything, it was nice for him to grace the EDSA Revolution anniversary. What I found intriguing or what I found interesting to note is, sabi niya, no, he's reaching out sa masa, sinasabi niya, mga taong Pilipino, kailangan ko kayo sa para magawa natin, matupad ko yung matuwid na daan. In other words, he's calling out to the people, to the masa, hey guys, help me. Help me in doing this, diba? Let's go after Corona. I kept thinking about it Sunday and then today, and I wrote about it this morning, and I said early this morning, I woke up early, I said, hey, hang on. Ang matuwid na daan is what are you trying to tell us? No, wala nang korupsyon, diba? Is that how you look at it, diba? Okay. So, ang base ko dyan, ang korupsyon naman hindi naman sa private sector eh. Corruption is in government.
Government, yeah.
Government collects through our taxes, rightfully so that the state can subsist. And the state is supposed to deliver services from security, health, education, everything, di ba? Infrastructure, to make it a good business climate for all of us to generate an income and to generate to generate commerce, basically. But bakit ang presidente, kinakausap tayo, sinasabi, hey, ba't mo sinasabi sa amin? Kami, matuwid na daan. Parang kami sinasabihan mo na let's do something about it, dumiretso tayo. Hindi naman kami corrupt eh. Ang corrupt yung industriya mo eh. Correct me if I'm not. Because he's the president, he's the head of the executive, co-equal with the judiciary and the legislative. Never mind if there is their crisis, sila nag-aaway. But corruption is not in the private sector. Because the private sector does not require you to buy from me. Di ba tama? Tatayo ako ng negosyo. Sa akin ka lang pwede bumili. Hindi, di ba? Pag nakakagawa ang gaya ng banking sector, finance, yan, maraming loko dyan, maraming lokohan dyan. We are forced to take really low interest from our bank. The banks charge too much of credit cards, installment for anything. Di ba? Abuso yung mga bangko eh. But the only reason the banks are allowed to do this is because nasa batas, pwede nila gawin eh.
Yeah, pwede.
So, sino nagkukulang? Legislatura. Di ba? Ang pulis. Ayaw manghuli o kung makakahuli ng tao, matatakot kasi baka balikin siya ng kriminal.
Yeah.
So, ang nangyayari, nagkukulang na naman, ang pulis, gobyerno din yun. Pag pumunta ka ng korte, nako, puputi yung buhok mo gaya ng buhok ko bago...
Kakahintay.
Kakahintay bago maghusga. Di ba? Because it only takes the courts 50 years to rule anything in this country. Again, that's government. Di ba siya ang head ng government? Bakit mo kami sinasabihan matuwid na daan? Hey, sabihin mo sa mga gobyerno, sa mga tao nagtatrabaho sa gobyerno, sila magmatuwid na daan. Kasi kami, we are the abused citizenry. We are the abused party. Now we're going to the impeachment process, the boring impeachment process. But we are also made to bear with TV and radio the boring process of the whole circus. Because lokohan eh.
Yeah, lokohan.
Araw-araw, wala tayo narinig kundi sigawan ng mga judges ang prosecution kasi nahihiya na sila, sumusobrang hina ang prosecution. Di ba? Parang gano'n. This is what I look at. This is how I look at things.
Based on that, you answer it clearly na talagang hindi sila ready. The prosecution is not ready. Because if I would look at right now how the impeachment goes on, even at the start in December, as if the real agenda of the prosecution team and the people behind the impeachment of Corona is not to take the impeachment process sa Senado. It's more of a...
para mag-resign siya.
It's more of a personal blackmail.
Threat?
A threat. Unang-una, ano ang sabi? Papatawag namin ang iyong mga pamilya to witness. Papatawag namin sa ganito. So within that point, at the start pa lang, pinag-usapan na natin, napakatagal na. 188 congressmen, speed reading, nabasa, railroaded. Ibig sabihin, within a few days, naayos kagad yung complaint. So how could you gather so much evidences by this number of days?
That's what Senator Arroyo surmised this afternoon. Di ba parang pareho? But, John, if the objective is to threaten to make him resign like what happened with Gutierrez, the ombudsman, it backfired.
Yeah.
Now, number one, it backfired. So, tapos na dapat. Number two, napahiya mo na si CJ. I mean, I think if their objective is to discredit the person and the position, both the professional side and the personal side of Corona, I think they've already succeeded. Diba? Tapos na eh. Nasiraan mo na siya, And na-discredit mo na
So
siya
the problem,
professionally.
Harry, is that you do not discredit CJ Corona. You discredit the entire judicial system.
So, only the legals and the intellectuals see that. The massa don't see it that way. They don't understand it. Because many, if you notice, still believe merong the other side of it eh.
Yeah.
The point is, nasiraan na siya. Correct me if I'm wrong. How can the CJ go back to being the Chief Justice nga? Kanyari, let's assume tapos na lahat ng ngayong hapon at na-acquit. You think it bodes well for him to stay there for the next 5-6 years? 5 more years siya.
That would be the problem.
Yeah. Oo po siya, pipilitin niya, pero ang integridad niya, bagsak na.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually, he might, to save face, sit there for another 6 months to a year, but then he will let go. Diba? Because, but the point is, what purpose is it resolving? What resolution can we come to that he's corrupt, he's this, he's that? Siniraan eh. Alam mo naman in media, pag siniraan ka ng media, don't make a mistake, don't fight back.
Pero the problem, Harry, is this, minsan sa mindset ng Pilipino, kung sino yung inaapi, kung sino yung ginugulpe, nagkakaroon ng simpatsya. There would be two sides of this corona phenomenon based on that aspect. Merong naawa kay corona at merong mawawala ng tiwala kay corona.
Correct, agreed.
Ang problema sa maawa is that corona right now is being glorified by people who are pitying him. Ang problema dito is, pwede rin siyang maging pwede siyang bumalik sa sistema.
Why doesn't he just resign and run for the Senate? Di ba magsenado na lang siya?
Pwede
Di ba? Popular na lang siya. Kilala siya nationally. He got free publicity. And those who believe him, di yun na lang.
Kasi when you go to the Supreme Court, napakaraming sumusuporta kay Chief Justice Corona. Specifically right now, there is the INC support with Corona.
No, iba pa yun. Isa pa yan. That's happening tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Yung, anong tingin mo doon sa bukas?
Well, I think it's a show of force.
Yeah.
To show the president that there is another side to it that you can identify, that you need to identify. I found out that the INC has never had an event of this magnitude, and it's not a practice to hold something of this magnitude on an annual basis, much less with the invitation of the other religious groups, equally large, the El Shaddai, the Catholic Church, even the Protestant and Christian groups. The point is, any congregation of this magnitude can spell a threat.
Yeah.
Of course, they will stay within the religious boundaries and parameters. I would like to hear more of the snide remarks that might come out, that tawag dyan double speak. No? If I was the president, he better show up there para control ka, di ba?
There would be different scenarios tomorrow to prevent such big rally. Tulad yung nangyari sa Black Nazarene. What happened in the Black Nazarene? There were intelligence reports that there would be terrorism. Para kontrolin yung crowd. But the event tomorrow that would happen would be an eye-opener right now to the government because maaaring simpleng, lang siya, prayer rally, but it could evolve to something na medyo mas malawak.
You know, I'm not anti-Pinoy. I would like to state that openly on TV. If anything, I would like to promote his passion and his correct avenues. Maganda yung totoo naman yung matuwid na daan. Although it's very difficult to correct corruption, it is still a very noble cause. And I hope he succeeds. The problem is, the corruption, I think he needs to understand, is not in the private sector. We are the abused party. The corruption is called government. The G-men. Diba? I mean, from the services, from the time you get your licenses to the cotton cups, to the smugglers at the customs. I mean, diba? And then his leadership is maybe where we can now assess or measure his competence.
Within that point of view, is the Gatdula scenario?
Well, that's another issue.
Yeah, yung
that's
Gatdula.
But you know, like I keep saying, we're only as good as what we know.
Yeah.
We can discuss it based. You see, I can only argue that based on what I've read and what I know about
perception,
it. Perception nga lang.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems where there's smoke, there's fire. Laila de Lima speaks well, and she's a really good soldier of the president. But she generates the ire of many when people listen to her because of her, maybe her style. It's like Miriam. You either love Miriam or you hate Miriam. Di ba? When you listen to Senator Santiago, you're either for her talagang, ang galing mo. Oh, you really hate the shit out of her. Di ba? Ganun lang yun eh. Ganun din lumalabas kay DOJ de Lima eh. Either you like her a lot or you don't. Kasi parang impertinente yung dating eh. I guess in government, maybe there is some truth. You need a bit of acting and you need a bit of passion.
Why acting? Why acting?
Well, because passion has to be able, you have to be able to convey the message for people to understand and listen to you. People have to believe what you're saying. And it is in the way you execute your passion or your beliefs to make people perceive the right, for them to get the right perception.
That would be the concept of acting. The problem is that there would be directors behind the scene in the government, and that's the most dangerous.
Well, yes and no. The ability, well, one of the biggest powers I believe Pinoy has that I think he should maximize on is perception, whether true or not. Is the massa really believe in him? That is really powerful.
The point there is that if within the government there is acting and actors, there is somebody behind directing the president.
Yeah, no, but only when it comes to broadcast and conveying messages.
No, in terms of policy.
No, well, in policy direction, I think that's always has to be left to the director, to the president per se, the leader, who cannot do everything himself. He needs the cabinet secretaries to update him. Hey, this is what's happening here, this is what's happening here. What's your decision?
But the problem would be this. Noynoy, or President Pinoy right now, is very busy about his love life with Grace Lee.
Well, maybe that's what you should do. Make a decision there, get it over with, and do it whatever which way you go.
How can I study all these facts, all these memorandums, executive order, when I'm busy dating her?
Yeah, well, that's a problem. I always thought, I found it funny for the president.
That's a current event.
I know, that's a current event. Well, I found it funny. You remember about a year ago when he was being criticized for his fancy cars, the sports cars, the BMW and whatnot. I often wondered then, Presidente ka, you're busy 7 days a week, and then you have time to drive around in your BMW, considering it's a security risk. I don't see when you can drive it. You know, my son asked me a couple of times, it's typical father and son, son and father, daughter and father, hey, Dad, why don't you be president? And I looked at him and I said, with a stern face, not joking, without laughing, sabi ko, alam mo, Gino, not for anything. I would probably accept the job as a vice president, I said. I actually enjoy legislation. I wouldn't mind being in Congress because I find that the exchange of ideas and 287 of you there. I wouldn't like to be a mayor. I wouldn't mind being a vice governor. I'm not a governor. Council member, not even, because there's too much work. Much less president. Imagine, you've got to sacrifice 6 years of your life. Number one, you know, every time you sneeze, there's a camera taking a shot of your face, contorting, because you're expelling, exhausting some type, whatever. Your public life goes out the window. You have no privacy. Which is why, and going back to your question, why Grace Lee? I don't know how Grace Lee can take it. I mean, gee. Unless she really likes to be in the magnifying glass. I guess it's one way of projecting her career. But to go public, to go that public, gee, it's, I would find it irritating. Unless, of course, that's your objective, because any which way that you've chosen in life, you have failed. Diba? So that's the way I would look at it. But this, going back to this impeachment process, I only fear, the only thing that disgusts me with the whole process, although I enjoy the legalities, mga terminologies, tsaka yung mga wit, pagalingan on the spot. You remember, these people have to perform on their feet. It's live TV. And we're learning a lot about the process. And of course, the magnificent Enrile at 88 years old. I mean, really, magnificent. Diba? Regardless of his past. Although it's stained because of the Marcos era, it's showing today what he is, who he is, and what he does. You've got to take off your hat. I mean, meron eh.
Well, regardless of all these facts in the impeachment process, even the evidences, it is still a political game, a numbers game. And specifically when they come up with the decision, it is not based on the rules of evidence, but rather on the perception or the mindset
of the judges. Well, what I find funny there, like you said, it's true, it's a numbers game. But can you imagine, you've got 23 senator judges who are, let's see, hearing a case of impeachment about the integrity of a person, no less the Chief Justice.
What is funny to me during, I think...
But sila, may integrity issue ba yung judges? Yun na nga, if you live in a glass house, huwag ka mambabato.
Yeah.
Kasi mababasag ang salamin. Di ba? Sila rin, may integrity issue din.
The last Monday when there was discussing, I think I think that was last Monday, the order of the business that would they defy the TRO of the Supreme Court. Look at it. They would define or debate on the defiance of the TRO.
But, the answer to that question, Dr. John, is one, let's be clear on it. They defied the TRO. Questioning and debating something that is not in the rule of law is already a violation. So what is there to debate? Unless you want to change the whole system, that the judiciary is under the executive. Then palitan natin. Let's not follow the American system. Let's make the judiciary under the executive if that's what this government wants.
You mentioned the American system. That was the problem during that time after 1986 when they erased the Marcos Constitution. They imitate again the American Constitution, which is based on the Senate.
1935 Constitution, bumalik tayo.
1935. But if you would study history, specifically the American history, at first there were no senators during the time. They're all representatives and congressmen. But the bigger states in the U.S. argue that it's very unfair for us to have only few congressmen, representatives. So they look at representation through states. And the first part is that when the Senate was established, it was by mere appointment. So that small states such as Rhode Island were given equal opportunity. Now, ginagaya ng Pilipinas yung sistema sa Amerika na hindi naman tugma sa Pilipinas. Ganun na nangyari. Specifically, when it comes to our system, iba yung kultura natin sa kultura ng Amerikano. Sa politika, sa pangkalahatan. Tignan natin ngayon yung usapin ng democratic process. Ang daming problema ng ating bayan. Problema ng kahirapan, problema ng terorismo, problema ng edukasyon. Pag pinasa sa lower house, sabi, sige, debate ulit tayo, punta sa upper house. Pagaling sa upper house, debate ulit. Ang tao nagugutom na, democratic process pa tayo ng democratic process. Kaya, the most powerful house, yung third house na tinatawag, which is very invisible, the Bicameral Conference Committee. Unlike if it is a parliamentary system, napakasimple lang di ba?
Naku, balik na naman tayo sa Chacha.
Sa Chacha,
Balik na naman tayo sa Chacha.
During the 1987 Constitution, I remember that.
But people don't trust government. That's why Chacha never made it.
Ito ang problema, Harry. Noong 1987, there were debates about the ratification of the Constitution. There were so many who were against the 1987 Constitution. And right now, nadadama na natin yung kapalpakan ng 1987
Yes,
Constitution.
lumalabas na. No less than Enrile has put that up.
Yeah,
The legal luminaries. Totoo naman But the problem is we're living with it. And, the legals are now confused who's who because the House Supreme no longer exists. It's under threat, it's under fire. It's not only that, they're bombing it left and right, so to speak. And the Court Supreme is slowly becoming rendered useless. When this happens, my point of view is you and I will no longer have any rights. Parang ganun na nangyayari. But I can see the point also, President Noynoy John. It only takes 50 years to resolve anything. The judiciary system in this country has totally failed. It is, I can say it openly on TV, it's corrupted. The whole system is corrupted. Diba? I've gone to court so many times. I mean, it's either incompetence or corruption, or one of the two.
But the problem, in terms of corruption, Harry, it's so very malignant and it's a cancer. How could you heal cancer?
But like I said, corruption is only in government. Hindi naman sa private sector.
Pero what's the cure for cancer?
Let's take out government.
You kill the government.
I'm not sure yung statement ni President Quezon was correct after 60, 70 years only to find out. I wonder if we would be better off being run by the Americans or being run very poorly by the Filipinos. I don't know. John, we're going to have to take a short break. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you don't mind our banter as we sit here and talk of political issues and current events. You got to remember, like the station says, there's a disclaimer at the beginning that the views and points of views of the station are not necessarily those of the hosts and the resource people. Yes, this is very, very subjective. This is not objective. It's only points of view based on our experiences, because we are only as good as what we know, what we hear, and what we read. Stay with us. We'll be right back with you.
Okay, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Kanina, Harry and I were discussing about current events and what is happening in our country. Ngayon, we're now in the second part. We will talk about local governance. Last week, may guest po tayo who discusses about local government. Now, our guest is a former mayor and has so many accomplishments in terms of in the city, such as maybe we can say it peace and order, social development, and so many aspects. And ang ating pong guest ay dati po siyang lumalabas sa pelikula. Yung mga nanonood po ng araw na magagaling mahilig sa aksyon ay napapanood niyo po ang ating guest na to. And he's been a mayor, was a mayor for I think 3 terms sa syudad na ito at marami rin po siya. Siya po yung siguro masasabi natin nagpatunay na yung dinastiya ay talagang nabubuwag at yung mga tao ay kayang bumoto base sa kanilang kaisipan. Siguro pakilala natin ating guest. Ang ating pong guest ay walang iba kundi si dating Mayor Ray Malonzo.
Thank you, Doc. At, I'm very much honored na maging guest dito sa GNN. Actually, palagi ko lang ito pinapanood eh. Hindi ko alam kung saan. Akala ko ito yung RJ dati. Akala ko yung government.
Bagay ka naman dito, politics to both sides ka naman. Nag-entertainment ka, nag-politics ka.
Sometimes may mga issues na gusto ko sanang mag-email, pumasok, mag-chat dahil maganda yung mga topics particularly. Ito, itong inyong show, nakakagulat na kaya sabi ko nga, dapat siguro palawakin pa itong coverage ninyo. Hindi puro ganito lang eh. Anyway, thank you, Doc. At ako kasi 3 terms naging mayor. Pero 4 na beses akong ibinoto.
Kasi yung recall, yung isa.
Pagkat na-recall. I have made history. All over the Philippines, I'm the only person na na-recall na nanalo.
Ano yan, ni-recall ka? Ano reason nun?
Wala kasing reason eh. Parang katulad lang din yan sa...
Ano yan, yung kalaban mo lang? Binanatan ka ng kalaban mo?
Yeah, binanatan ako ng kalaban ko.
So, procedural, legal, na-recall ka, pinahusga yung taong bayan, binoto ka na naman.
Mas marami pa naging boto ko. Kasi nung araw, ang recall ay ginagawa lang ng mga barangay officials. Yung tinatawag na preparatory recall elections.
Okay.
Iniipon yung mga barangay, kung halimbawa, kampi doon sa kalaban ko yung mga barangay, pipirma sila ng petition against me. At yun yung nangyari. Kasi ako, I was introducing reform sa mga barangay. Dahil ang corruptions nga, nakikita ko masyadong talamak. So sabi ko, kailangan baguhin na natin yung mga barangay hall na nasa kalye, hindi ko na pinayagan. Kaya kung pupunta kayo ng Caloocan, nagkalat...
Nilabanan ka tuloy.
Nilabanan tuloy ako. Kaya mahirap mag-introduce ng pagbabago nang hindi ka masasaktan talaga eh. At any rate, naging matapang ako at nagpapasalamat ako sa mga taga-Caloocan. Despite na nirecall ako, marang issues against me, kesyo corrupt daw kami, kung ano-anong issues kinamit sa media, na hindi nila napaniwala yung taong bayan. At still, ibinoto pa rin ako ng mas maraming taong bumoto kesa nung unang nanalo ako. Imagine ano lang to I was elected 1995. 1997, there was an election. Just 2 years. How could I deliver yung gusto ko sa loob ng 2 taon? Imagine kung na-recall ako, wasted yung boto ng tao noong 1995.
Pero yung tinalo mo nun, isang napakatagal na dinastiya sa Caloocan eh.
Totoo yun. At I was thinking na yung dinastiya ay unti-unti nang maalis sa Pilipinas sa magitan ng isa sa mga ginawa.
Ano naging formula mo nun?
Kasi alam mo, ang mga taong bayan, nung right after the Cory Magic nung araw, after ni Presidente Ramos, maganda ang takbo ng elections eh. Unti-unti nababawasan yung dinastiya. Kaya lang nakalulungkot na muling bumalik ngayon. All over the Philippines. Mas lumala. Kasi nga hindi na pasa yung anti-dynasty bill. At hanggang ngayon, nakapending pa rin sa Kongreso. At mga congressmen at iba pang mga politiko.
Pabor ka ba doon sa anti-dynasty bill?
Oo naman.
Paano naman yung aspeto, halimbawa, tumakbo yung anak ng isang politiko? Karapatan niyang tumakbo eh. Taong bayan naman ang mamimili. Tama
yun, pero let's look at this na kapag ka nakaupo yung tatay, mo pwedeng maipanalo yung anak o asawa or hanggat kung dadayain niya. Ako I tried yung gano'n pero walang daya. Pero hindi dinastiya. Gusto kong dinastiya yung talagang binoboto ng tao. Kaya lang ngayon ba, may credibility pa yung elections. Yung isang tinatanong natin. Dahil lalo na itong nakaraang election, even naging computerized, alam naman natin maraming protesta about the PCOS machine. Di ba? At hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin maliwanag kung talagang yung...
Tingin mo, the last election, puro saksakan ng dayaan?
Sobrang dami, lalo na sa amin sa Caloocan, ang vote buying.
Miski even, sa vote buying side.
Vote buying.
Yes, correct.
And nakikita ko, mas madaling dayain yung sa PCOS machine. Sabi nga nung isang dating COMELEC chairman, hindi ko lang sasabihin ko sino, supposedly, ang principle ng election...
Dapat sabihin mo, maganda yung malaman ng taong bayan.
Si Chairman Munsod.
Okay.
Sabi niya, ang principle dapat ng election, secret voting and
Correct.
public counting.
Correct.
Pero nangyari dito, public voting and secret counting. Pero madali kasi makita, di ba malaki.
Pero nalaman natin, presidente natin, in how many hours? 4 hours? 5 hours?
Well, that's the question. Ako, ayoko namang questionin yung pagkapanalo ni presidente, di ba? Pero sa local, definitely meron. Marami. Kaliwat kanan, marami.
Paano nadadaya doon sa... Ibig sabihin, nabavirus, na iba yung software niyan?
Kasi ganit, ako ganun ang experience ko kasi may lumapit sa akin para
magkano in-offer sa'yo?
1.5 lang.
Oh my God.
At mananalo na ako. Sabi ko, paano nyo dadayain ng computer? I did not believe.
Yes. That's my first question would be the same.
Even I myself, I could not believe na pwedeng gawin yon. Kaya nga hindi ako sumama ron. Sabi ko, hindi ako naniniwala na kaya nyo dayain yung computer eh. Pero dahil nga sa nakikita natin na ito, hindi mo makikita ang resulta pag boto mo eh.
Hindi nga.
Pag boto mo, congratulations.
Correct. Correct. Paglabas doon,
di ba?
Ito Mayor, yung sa dayaan ng 2010, anong pinakatalamak? Vote buying o yung PCOS rigging?
Ako naniniwala ako may problema ron sa PCOS at mas lalong talamak yung vote buying. Ang vote buying kasi simple dahil makikita mo yung pagboto eh. Yung biniling botante, babayaran muna ng kalahati kasi may mga kubul-kubul sila ron sa baba eh. Babayaran muna ng kalahati.
Para
tapos,
sigurado.
Para sigurado. Tapos sasamahan hanggang doon sa presinto. At doon sa presinto, sa laki ng balota, makikita mo yung...
kung sino binoboto niya.
Sino binoboto kasi si-shade mo eh. Di ba, matatanaw mo eh. Kaya nga public voting at hindi naging secret voting.
What do you recommend to the COMELEC now that they have to do something because they have to either buy these PCOS machines from Smartmatic at only 2 billion, something like that, or go through the 7 billion, that's all they have left, to go to the 2013 election? Anong dapat gawin nila?
Ang hirap ko kasi i-recommend.
Kasi
yung PCOS machine, ako, I don't...
Nakita mo nga eh.
Ako, I don't...
So, tapo na natin Smartmatic.
I have no trust on that. Doon sa na-experience ko.
You're a victim of it. Of course.
I am a victim.
You're a victim. So, throw that out dapat. What should we introduce? Balik natin sa manual. Hindi kayo matagal?
Merong sinasabi na parang ATM eh.
Okay.
ATM system na computerized din. Una-una, yung
yung optical scan, sigurado. Yung fingerprint mo.
Fingerprint na.
Wala ng doble bota.
At saka makikita mo na yung resulta mo. Pagka boto mo, alam mong pumasok yung boto mo.
So we need a system na nagma-manual count, automatic. Pag naboto ka, +1.
Mas mahal yun.
Wala kasi tayong way para ma-record yung yung boto eh. Ako para sa akin, mas mabuti pa yung manual eh. Para sa akin, kung hindi rin lang magkakaroon ng bagong...
Ang tawag dito, smart. Masyadong smart.
Masyadong smart.
Pero ngayong 2013, at the same time, PCOS pa rin ang gagamitin.
Naku, sabi ko nga, natatakot ako dito.
Have they decided, John, the Commission of Elections have not really...
Pero, the scenario would be...
The same.
They're gonna buy it. So, bibiling nila yung PCOS machine.
Actually, si Senador Coco Pimentel, siya yung chairman ng...
Because he's the biggest victim of this.
Committee ng electoral report.
Yes.
So we are trying to introduce mga bagong reports para maipasa sa Senado.
The Philippine Computer Society went against that. Tinira nila the system of computerization because maraming codes nito na hindi lumabas eh. And now they're asking them to check. Pero ang problema, hanggang ngayon, COMELEC hindi pa rin sinasagot eh. I mean, they're still debating the electoral fraud of GMA, which is way back in 2007. When are we going to start working on 2013? We only have a year to go. Diba?
Di pag ganyan yung case, Mayor, dito, nung 2010 election, maraming huwad na Mayor, huwad na...
Ako, I believe,
huwad na
merong
Vice
mga
Mayor.
ganon.
Ibig sabihin, sa Caloocan, huwad na Mayor siya.
Ayoko magsabi na gano'n. Ako personally naniniwala ako na hindi totoo yung pagkapanalo nila.
Okay.
Di ba? Kasi imposible yung gano'n eh. Dahil nakita namin kung gaano kalakas yung dating namin doon sa election. Tapos, suddenly, pagkalaki-laki ng lamang sa amin. Kung kami nilamangan lang ng mga 10,000, 5,000.
Understandable.
Credible.
I would like to go sa local issue.
Sige.
Yung issue sa Caloocan ni Erice at ni Echeverry. Paano ba yun?
That's going crazy until now, no?
Kasi, yung pag-aaway nila mga issues na, kung titignan, tama naman yung kay Vice Mayor, ano?
Hindi nagbayad sa SSS.
GSIS. Kasi, sinisisi nga sa akin yan eh. Ako raw hindi nagbayad.
Oh, that's right.
Assuming na mayroon akong hindi nabayaran. But
you're supposed to follow it up in your term.
He has been there for more than 7 years.
Correct.
Di ba? Tsaka kasi yung hindi namin nabayaran, kaya hindi namin nabayaran nun, wala kasing malinaw na kwenta kung magkano yung babayaran namin.
Yung nga ang issue dun yung kwentahan eh.
Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin sila tapos ng kwentahan.
Yun ang main issue eh.
Ang issue naman ni Vice Mayor dyan, hindi pa pala tapos ang kwenta, hindi pa pala malinaw. Ba't nakipag-compromise ka na, nabayaran mo na yung mga charges, etc. Baka nalugi ang city government. Sa akin point, maganda rin naman yung...
Meron din.
Diba? Pero sa akin, in between me at saka yung acting mayor na ngayon, o yung incumbent mayor,
ay bayaran ni Echeverry, di ba?
kasi secretary ko lang yan eh. He cannot say na may kasalanan ako because he was my secretary. Kung may kasalanan ako, meron din siyang kasalanan.
Damay rin siya. Command responsibility.
Kasi siya yung pinagbabayad ko dati ng lahat ng mga mandatory payments eh. Dinelegate ko sa secretary to the mayor ang payments ng lahat ng mga tubig, Meralco, SSS, Pag-ibig. Sila na hindi ko na kailangan permahan pa yan kasi ano na yan eh, naka-record na. So kung merong hindi nabayaran, I can say na, siguro ikaw may kasalanan, hindi ako.
Siyempre, kasi you gave it him to automatically pay.
Yes.
So automatic appropriation sa city yun.
Meron mga appropriations eh. Kaya lang talagang, isa sa naging problema dyan, nasira ang computer ng GSIS. In fact, nakikipagdimandahan sila sa IBM if I am not mistaken eh.
Yes, they are.
So, hindi nila malaman. Sabi nung treasurer ko, Mayor, overpayment na tayo sa GSIS. Ba't sinisigil pa rin tayo?
Correct. Ganun nga, lumalabas.
Sabi ko, hindi nila makwenta eh. So, I sent a delegation. Nag-create ako ng committee para magpunta makipag-tali sa GSIS. Until I finish my term, hindi makwenta-kwenta kung magkano talaga.
That's not your fault.
That's not my fault.
How can you pay something you're not assessed for?
Exactly.
Hindi pwede, walang bill eh.
Exactly. How could I pay? Halimbawa, nagbayad ako sumobra, pwede ako makasuhan.
Or even payment na walang assessment, how will they accept payment?
Exactly.
For what purpose? Hindi pwede.
Exactly. Kaya nga, hanggang ngayon, sinasabi naman nila, kahit nakalagay dun sa kanilang sagot sa korte, na hanggang ngayon nakikipagkwentahan pa yung city government.
Correct.
At yun nga yung question nitong Vice Mayor.
Nilabanan na eh. Kinaso na, di ba?
Kinaso na.
Suspended na nga, di ba?
Well, supposedly.
No, na-TRO.
TNRO. Ng local. TNRO ng local court yung Court of Appeals, which is...
Ikaw naman lahat na pwede. Meron na nga tayong impeachment. Ang rule of law is no longer rule. Di ba? Ang tawag dyan, hearsay acceptable. Yan ang mga natututo natin sa impeachment. Di ba?
Well, mabuti na pag-uusapan natin yung impeachment. Ano mo, ako talaga totoo, hindi ako lawyer, pero marami ako natututunan dyan eh. Hindi pala po pwedeng yung ebidensya, kahit na tama na ebidensya, kapag kinuha mo sa illegal na paraan,
illegal pa rin.
Illegal pa rin at hindi admissible. Diba? Kaya tingin ko, in the end, mahihirapan din ma-impeach itong si Chief Justice.
Pero sabi ni Pinoy, our very president says that if he is not impeached or condemned, if he's acquitted, then he can no longer perform his promise of matuwid na daan. Diba sinabi niya yun eh? So in other words, for the next 4 years, he'll become inutil. So kailangan ma-impeach to. That's the message.
Well, siguro hindi naman hindi naman. Ako sa tingin ko hindi naman eh. Marami pa namang paraan na po pwedeng makausad eh. At saka siguro kung mag-dialogue lang talaga si Chief Justice Corona at saka
yung away nila sila na lang, tapusin nyo, tas labas na, di ba?
Naapektuhan tayong lahat eh.
Oo, correct.
Isa dun sa issue, yung in-open up ni Justice Corona, ni CJ Corona, yung impeachment daw, tatlo lang yan eh. Hacienda Luisita, yung isang Chief Justice na gusto maging Justice,
Si Carpio.
yung isang Vice Presidential na gusto maging Vice President.
Correct.
Kaya, ibig sabihin, nasa PDP labang ka eh. Ang usapin yan, isa sa maaaring maapektuhan pag na-impeach si Vice President.
Well, I hope not. Because I believe naman the Vice President legitimately won the election. Kasi kahit sa Caloocan, kitang-kita namin pagkapanalo ni Vice President Binay.
Ikaw na nagsabi, yung question ko hindi na legitimacy kung paano ngayon yung mga money over.
Kaya yun ang problema kasi. Sino ba ang grupo ang nandaya? Di ba? Dahil nga kung itong Picos Masin, pwedeng nandayain sa kaliwa, pwedeng nandayain sa kanan. Kasi yun yung paniniwala natin. Now it's very hard.
What would you recommend now that we're approaching 2013? We have another in-between election.
Well, ako sa nakita ko kasi experience sa Caloocan, sabi ko nga kay Senador Coco Pimentel, sabi ko, if there is a law against vote buying, why don't the Senate pass a law against vote selling? Diba?
Okay.
Para yung magbebenta ng boto niya,
tama yan.
pwede rin makasuhan.
The simplest yet the most practical. Probably the most astute recommendation.
Well, kaya lang I doubt who will pass a law against the people. Lalo na marami, gano'n, di ba? Kaya nga yung squatting, dumami ng dumami dahil nobody dares to pass a law that will really affect
That's
the
unpopular.
Oo. At hindi rin naman natin maalis kasi mga kababayan din natin yan. Kaya lang, kahit saan mo tignan ang angulo, meron pa rin may mali.
With the kind of election problem we have right now, sabi mo, may magulo, madaya, walang kredibilidad. May plano ka pa tumakbo niyan? Dadayain ka rin naman eh.
Yun nga palagi akong tinatanong eh. Actually, kanina sa elevator, sumakay ako, tinatanong ako ng isa sa mga reporter niya, Mayor, tatakbo pa ba ako? Sabi ko, titignan ko muna. I hope magbago muna yung kultura ng tao. Ang masama dito kasi yung kultura ng tao, umabot na sa tao ang
Corruption.
kultura ng electoral corruptions. Di ba?
Agreed.
Ang tao na ngayon, sa hirap ng buhay, tinatanggap nila yung ibinibigay sa kanila, kahit labag sa kalooban nila. Inuuna nila sikmura bago yung prinsipyo sa ngayon. Sa nakikita ko.
Mayor, we're already at the top of the hour. Sana we had you the first part, but maybe we can ask you to come back again. A very short message to mga viewers natin. What would you like to say to our viewers?